This unit will give you a better understanding of the Dog Act and how it impacts your community. Back in Unit 1, we talked about your duties and powers. We explained that you are an officer as defined in the Dog Act and you are responsible for enforcing it. Therefore, it is important that you are familiar with this Act and how it relates to your job. Though the Dog Act applies to all of the Northwest Territories, each community has its own unique way of handling dogs and issues or problems related to dogs. It is up to you to look into the responsibilities you have when it comes to enforcing the rules that dog owners must follow, handling dogs in distress, and capturing dogs that are running at large in your community. A copy of the Dog Act is included under the Supplemental Materials menu item. You should have it handy so that you can refer to it as we go along. We will now go over some key areas of the Act. RCMP and bylaw are defined as officers under this Act. An officer's power to carry out the duties within the Act only applies to his or her community, not elsewhere. Under this Act, dog owners have certain duties. They are making sure their dog has adequate food, water, and shelter, that it is never subject to too much heat or cold, and that it is cared for when it is sick or wounded. It is against the law for a dog owner to allow a dog in his or her care to suffer or to be in grave pain or danger. The experience of being in a state of suffering or being in pain and or danger is known as distress. It is illegal to cause a dog to be in distress. An exception to this rule is if the distress is related to an accepted activity. If the dog in question is used for protecting people from wildlife or harvesting, whether that's hunting, gathering, trapping, or fishing, it is acceptable for it to be under some distress. The Dog Act regulations state that the Commissioner can add other acceptable activities to that list if the community requires the use of dogs for some other purpose. There are standards for these accepted activities. They cannot be one of the prohibited practices or procedures set out in the Dog Act regulations, and they cannot cause any undue suffering to the dog. When it comes to dogs in distress, officers have certain powers. If a dog is in distress and the owner does not immediately take measures to relieve its distress, or the officer cannot find the owner immediately to inform him or her of the dog's distress, then the officer may take any action he or she thinks is necessary to relieve the dog's distress. This includes capturing or taking custody of the dog and arranging for any necessary transportation, food, water, shelter, and veterinary care. An officer who takes custody of a dog may act as a caretaker or may deliver the dog to a caretaker. A caretaker in this Act means a person who has appropriate facilities for keeping a dog. An abandoned dog includes a dog that is left for more than 24 hours without adequate food, water, or shelter, left for 5 days after the time they were supposed to be picked up from a veterinarian or dog pound, or found on a premises where the owners have since moved away. An officer may take an abandoned dog into custody, whether or not it is in distress, and either act as a caretaker or deliver the dog to a caretaker. For the purposes of this Act, a dog is running at large if it is not on the owner's property and it is neither muzzled nor under the physical control of a person. No dog owner can allow his or her dog to run at large if there is a municipal bylaw in place that prohibits this, which is the case in most communities. Also, a dog cannot be allowed to run at large in an unincorporated community or an area that is outside of a community, unless the dog is under the immediate control of a person. If a dog is running at large, you, the officer, have the right to take custody of the dog. You may then either act as the caretaker or you may deliver the dog to a caretaker. An officer who takes custody of a dog needs to make sure that the dog is provided with the necessary transportation, food, water, and shelter. The officer may also need to get the dog to a veterinarian if it is necessary and practical to do so. An officer who takes custody of a dog needs to locate the owner and notify him or her of the actions taken in respect of the dog. The Dog Act states the following: a person who destroys a dog shall do so in a manner that prevents undue suffering. Therefore, it is illegal for anyone to kill a dog in an inhumane fashion. However, there are several different situations in which it is legal to kill a dog. Anyone may kill a dog that is running at large and in the act of pursuing, attacking, injuring, damaging, killing, or destroying a person, another dog that is tied up, a food cache, harness, or other equipment, or cattle, horses, sheep, pigs, poultry, or animals on a fur farm. An officer who is unable to capture a dog that is running at large may destroy the dog. An officer may destroy a dog taken into custody if he or she believes that the dog is an immediate threat to the safety of the public. An officer may also destroy a dog or authorize its destruction if the dog has not been claimed by its owner and the dog is not suitable to be sold or given away, or the officer is unable to sell or give away the dog. For the purposes of enforcing this act and the regulations, an officer may, without a warrant, during ordinary business hours, enter and inspect any place or premises other than a person's home where dogs are kept for sale, hire, or exhibition, or enter and inspect any vehicle used to transport dogs. As a bylaw officer, you need to follow any municipal bylaws your community has in place surrounding dogs, even if this act contradicts them. Your community's dog bylaw takes precedence over this act. If a dog owner is convicted of an offense under this act or the regulations, the court may make an order restraining the owner from having or continuing to have custody of dogs for as long as they think is necessary. If a dog owner is convicted of an offense under this act, and the court thinks that the dog should be destroyed for humane reasons or for the safety of the public, the court may order the destruction of the dog. Your council will most likely have a dog bylaw that is tailored to the unique needs of your community. The Dog Act states that the Commissioner, on the recommendation of the Minister, can make their own regulations regarding dog protection and enforcement. The regulations can be about taking dogs into custody, care and treatment of dogs, including designating an activity as an accepted activity, as we discussed in the Dogs in Distress section, or designating a practice or procedure as prohibited. The regulations can also be about the expenses that may be charged by a caretaker for the care provided to a dog taken into custody, or any other matter the Commissioner considers necessary or advisable for carrying out this act. Now you should have a basic understanding of the Dog Act, but because this act is a very big part of your job, it is important that you go through it again on your own and make sure you know all of the rules. As we've said, each community has its own unique way of handling dog enforcement and protection. It is up to you to do more research about the responsibilities you have when it comes to the rules that dog owners must follow. You also need to be up to date on the rules surrounding handling dogs in distress and capturing dogs that are running at large in your community.